There is a plant growing in your lawn right now that can stop bleeding in 60 seconds. A plant that was buried with Neanderthals 60,000 years ago in the mountains of Iraq. A plant named after a Greek warrior who used it to save his soldiers on the battlefields of Troy.
Hold up. Did you catch that? A plant in your lawn that can stop bleeding in under a minute. Sounds like something out of a survival movie, right? But this story goes way deeper than backyard weeds. Stick around, because what we're about to uncover might completely change how you see the plants around you.
And today, it is called a weed. They sell you chemicals to spray it. They publish bulletins on how to eradicate it. They have created an entire industry teaching you to poison it out of existence. This plant has been used as battlefield medicine for 3,000 years. It contains compounds that modern pharmaceuticals are still trying to replicate. It grows for free in every climate where humans live. And that is precisely why they had to make you forget it. This is the story of yarrow, the plant that healed warriors and terrifies a $10 billion industry. Welcome to Nature's Lost Vault. Before we open this vault, the best way to support this channel is by giving it a like, subscribing, and sharing these vaults with people who need to remember what we forgot. The archive opens in 1957. American anthropologist Ralph Selecki and his team were excavating Shanidar Cave in the Zagros Mountains of northern Iraq. They were looking for bones. They found something that would rewrite the history of medicine. 10 Neanderthal skeletons, dating back 60,000 years. But it was not the bones that shocked the scientific community. It was the soil around them. One skeleton, known as Shanidar 4, was different. When palynologist Arlette Leroy-Gourhan analyzed the soil samples 8 years later in 1965, she found concentrated clumps of pollen. This was not pollen blown in by the wind. These flowers had been deliberately gathered and placed in the grave. She identified grape hyacinth, bachelor's button, ground cell. But the sample was dominated by one plant, yarrow.
Let's pause here for a second. Think about this. 60,000 years ago, long before pharmacies or hospitals, Neanderthals were already identifying specific plants for healing. That raises a fascinating question. How did ancient humans discover these medicinal properties without microscopes or labs?
This was not decoration. This was a pharmacy. 60,000 years ago, before agriculture, before written language, before Homo sapiens had even fully conquered the globe, Neanderthals understood that this specific plant held power. While we are told modern medicine is only 200 years old, our ancestors were using yarrow as sophisticated medicine when they were still living in caves. The plant they chose is unmistakable. Feathery leaves, so finely divided they look like tiny ferns. White flowers bloom in flat-topped clusters. A smell that hits you instantly, sharp, herbaceous, like pine needles crushed between your fingers. Botanists call it Achillea millefolium, the 1,000 leaves, named for what happened next. The year is 1194 BC. The beaches of Troy. The greatest warrior in Greek history commands an army against the fortified city. His name was Achilles. According to the Iliad, Achilles carried a secret weapon into combat. It was not a sword, it was a plant. Legend says the centaur Chiron taught him to pound the feathery leaves into a paste and pack them directly into sword cuts and spear wounds. It stopped the bleeding. It prevented infection. It allowed soldiers to survive wounds that should have killed them. This was not mythology added later. The ancient Greeks named the plant Achilleos. The Romans called it Herba militaris, the military herb. Because on the battlefields of the ancient world, yarrow meant the difference between bleeding out in the mud or surviving to fight another day. And this is not just folklore. A 1954 study by researcher Miller found that just 0.5 milligrams of achilline, yarrow's active compound, per kilogram of body weight reduces blood clotting time by 32%. 32% faster. When an artery is severed, that is the math of survival. Medieval knights carried dried yarrow in their armor pouches. Civil War soldiers stuffed it into gunshot wounds. In World War I, when antiseptics ran out in the trenches, medics brewed yarrow tea to wash gangrenous wounds. From the Trojan War to the Great War, yarrow...
And this is where the story becomes almost unbelievable. From ancient Greek battlefields to World War trenches, the same plant keeps showing up as emergency medicine. Different cultures, different centuries, but the same solution. That kind of historical consistency makes you wonder, coincidence or forgotten science?
Yarrow marched through 3,000 years of human history, and then, suddenly, it disappeared. But the story is not just about time. It is about geography. When European settlers arrived in North America, they found something that defied explanation. Indigenous peoples across the continent, separated from the Greeks by an ocean and 5,000 years, were using the same plant for identical purposes. The Navajo called it life medicine. They chewed it for toothaches and packed it into wounds. The Cherokee drank it to break fevers. The Pawnee used it for pain relief. The Ojibwe inhaled yarrow steam to treat migraines. The Zuni people took it a step further. Before fire-walking ceremonies, they chewed yarrow blossoms and swallowed the juice. The plant's compounds provided enough pain relief and reduced inflammation to allow them to walk across burning coals. Think about that. Neanderthals in Iraq, Greeks in Troy, the Navajo in Arizona. How did cultures separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years independently discover that medical application? Because yarrow actually worked.
Now here's the wild part. Completely separate civilizations across the world, Neanderthals, Greeks, and Native American tribes, were all using the same plant for similar medical purposes. No internet, no shared textbooks, no global communication. So how did they all arrive at the same conclusion?
Actually works. Modern research has confirmed what the ancients knew instinctively. A 2024 study published in the Journal of Traditional and Complementary Medicine found that topical yarrow extract reduced bleeding time by 36% on surgical incisions, not paper cuts. Surgical incisions. The plant is a chemical powerhouse. It contains tannins that constrict blood vessels, physically closing the wound. It contains azulene, a compound that turns blue when distilled, which reduces inflammation and triggers tissue regeneration. It contains salicylic acid, the precursor to aspirin, for pain. And it contains flavonoids like apigenin that destroy bacteria. The essential oil of yarrow inhibits Staphylococcus aureus, E. coli, and Candida. These are the bacteria that cause MRSA and systemic infection. In wound healing studies, injuries treated with yarrow closed faster, developed healthier tissue, and showed less scarring than the control groups. A 2017 clinical trial found that it even helped heal surgical incisions after childbirth with significantly less pain. 60,000 years ago, Shanida IV did not have a microscope. He could not measure achilline concentrations, but he knew. So if yarrow is this effective, if it stops bleeding, kills bacteria, and relieves pain, why is it not in...
This is the question that really flips the narrative. If a plant works this well, stopping bleeding, fighting bacteria, easing pain, why isn't it common knowledge today? Whenever history and medicine collide with economics, things tend to get complicated.
Why is it not in every first aid kit in America? Why are we spraying it with poison instead of harvesting it? You simply have to follow the money. The turning point was 1897. A chemist at Bayer named Felix Hoffmann synthesized acetylsalicylic acid. We know it as aspirin. It was derived from natural salicylic acid found in plants like meadowsweet, willow, and yarrow. There was a problem with the plants. You cannot patent a leaf. You cannot patent a root. You can patent a synthetic extraction process. Aspirin became one of the most profitable drugs in human history. 40,000 tons are consumed annually. It is a $10 billion market. There is a hidden cost. Synthesized aspirin causes 16,000 deaths and 100,000 hospitalizations every year in the US alone, from gastrointestinal bleeding and ulcers. Yarrow contains salicylic acid naturally. It does not burn a hole in your stomach. Why? Because in nature, the chemical does not exist in isolation. In yarrow, the salicylic acid is bound in a matrix with tannins and flavonoids. The tannins protect the stomach lining while the acid treats the pain. Nature engineered a buffer system that pharmaceutical science ignored. When you isolate a compound, you strip away the safety mechanisms evolved over millions of years. Isolated compounds are patentable, profitable, controllable. Whole plants are not. So throughout the 20th century, as the pharmaceutical industry consolidated power, yarrow was systematically demoted. Medical schools stopped teaching it. Doctors dismissed it as folklore. Yarrow went from herba militaris, the savior of soldiers, to a noxious weed. The definition of a weed is simply a plant that the industry has not figured out how to monopolize yet. They classified it as a nuisance because they could not commodify it. They created chemicals to kill it because they could not patent it. They convinced you it was worthless because its value undermines their business model. But here is what they cannot control. Yarrow refuses to die. It grows in all 50 states, every Canadian province, every continent except Antarctica. It thrives in poor soil. It tolerates drought. It survives being walked on. It requires zero fertilizer. Once established, it spreads through underground rhizomes, coming back year after year. It is the ultimate survivalist. Bringing it back to your garden is an act of resistance. You can start yarrow from seed, but remember, the seeds need light to sprout. Sprinkle them on the surface of the soil. Do not bury them, or simply find a wild patch and take a root division. Plant it in full sun. Give it terrible soil. Ignore it. It will thrive. By the end of the first year, a small planting will fill a 3 by 4 foot bed. Harvest it when the flowers are fully open, typically midsummer to early fall. Cut the top third of the plant, including flowers, leaves, and stems. Do it in the morning, after the dew has evaporated, but before the sun gets hot. That is when the volatile oils are at their peak. Tie the stems in small bundles and hang them upside down in a dark, airy place. Or use a dehydrator on low heat. When the leaves crumble like crackers, they are ready. Store them in a glass jar. They will keep their potency for years. To use it for a wound, crush the fresh leaves into a green paste and apply it directly to the cut. The bleeding stops, and the pain fades. To use it for a fever, steep a teaspoon of dried flowers in boiling water. It opens the pores and breaks the fever naturally. A quick note of caution. Yarrow is powerful. If you are allergic to ragweed or daisies, test a small amount first. If you are pregnant or on blood thinners, consult a professional. But for the vast majority of human history, for the vast majority of people, yarrow was the first line of defense. This is what they do not want you to understand. Every empire in history has controlled its population through 3 things: food, medicine, and information. When you cannot grow your own food, you depend on the system. When you cannot heal your own wounds, You depend on the system. When you do not know there is an alternative, you are trapped in the system. Yarrow breaks the lock. It grows like a weed. It works in minutes. It costs nothing. It has been tested by 60,000 years of human use, a clinical trial vastly longer than any drug on the market today. The Neanderthal buried in that cave in Iraq knew something we have been taught to forget. He knew that the earth provides. He knew that health is not something you buy. It is something you grow. Yarrow proves it. Once you learn
and here's the takeaway that makes this story powerful. Knowledge like this wasn't lost because it didn't work. It was lost because people stopped looking for it. So next time you see a weed growing in the cracks of a sidewalk, ask yourself, is it really useless? Or is it a piece of forgotten history?
Once you learn to identify those feathery leaves and flat white flowers, you will see them everywhere. In parks, along highways, in the cracks of the sidewalk, growing wild in the margins of the very system that tried to erase it. They buried the knowledge, but the plant survived, just like it has for 60,000 years. The white flowers are blooming right now. Each one contains more healing power than a bottle of pills manufactured in a sterile factory. Achilles knew it. The Navajo knew it. The Neanderthals knew it. And now, you know it. Plant the original. If this vault opened something for you, subscribe to Nature's Lost Vault. We are digging up the wisdom they tried to bury. The next vault opens soon.